Hello, Augies Worldwide. I'm Dave Kassler, amateur radio call sign KE0OG, and welcome to Ask Dave number 237. Today we take our first look at the ICOM 7610. This radio is on loan from Brad Rich, N6GR, of Alamogordo, New Mexico. You will remember Brad from the video detailing the setup of the Step IR Big IR antenna. He came all the way up here from Alamogordo to help me put that antenna up. Not only was his strong back most appreciated, but he had set up a Big IR before and was able to properly interpret the instructions for me. I greatly appreciate what he has done. He is an Augie and a patron and a gentleman. Thank you, Brad. The ICOM 7610 is officially a mid-range transceiver, although I would call it pretty high-end. This is probably not a radio for beginners, but if you have 2 or 3 years of vigorous experience on HF, you might find this of interest. The radio is aimed particularly at contestors, meaning those hams who participate in the many on-the-air contests held throughout the year, sponsored by various organizations, including the ARRL. This video is, in particular, aimed at introducing the 7610 and describing its features. Future videos will explore the features in more depth and will include review videos. I have removed my Yaesu FTDX 3000 from service temporarily and put the 7610 in its place. Naturally, because there are 2 manufacturers involved, there's lots of cable switching and adjustment. The 7610 is now running on my solar system, which includes the TGE battery booster, so the radio sees a very nice steady 13.8 volts DC. My on-the-air experience with it so far shows it to be an outstanding radio. As I said, this is a mid-range transceiver aimed at contestors, and it is in the $3,000 price range and is readily available from the usual suppliers such as HRO and DX Engineering. During the holiday season, it is on sale a little bit and you can save a couple $100. The 7610 is a serious update from the ICOM 7600, which in itself is a formidable contest radio, but the innards are completely different, including a bigger screen. It is a state-of-the-art, software-defined radio. Its little sister is the ICOM 7300, a very popular radio, also completely software-defined and digital. I reviewed the 7300 previously and was very impressed. The 7610 adds lots of features. As noted, it is not a super heterodyne, but is all digital with a direct sampling front end. In other words, there is only an RF amp and some preselector capability before you get to the analog to digital conversion. There are some compensating features to deal with particularly strong nearby signals, a common problem during contests when the bands are nearly full and lots of loud stations are on the band. A key feature of the 7610 is 2 fully featured independent receivers. You can use these to switch bands instantly, or for dual operations, or dual watch capability, meaning monitoring 2 frequencies at once, one in either side of your headphones, and it can even be used for diversity type reception, using 2 different antennas on the same signal. For example, if you use one antenna that is vertically polarized and the other antenna is horizontally polarized, you can listen to the same station on both, in both ears, but one for each antenna. Sometimes signals arrive with slowly rotating polarization, and for a moment will appear stronger on one antenna than the other, and then the other antenna will provide the better signal for a while. You'll hear the result of each antenna in your headphones, and it sounds really interesting as the signal fades from one side to the other. It should be noted that diversity reception is not a panacea for fading, but it sometimes can really help. Each receiver has its own RF gain and audio frequency gain controls. The controls for the primary receiver are located above those for the secondary receiver. I'm used to the gain controls being along the bottom of the panel, so it has taken me some getting used to in order to use the correct set of controls. You'll notice from a picture of the receiver that there's only one large frequency tuning knob. There's a little button above it so you can switch between receivers with that knob, or you can get an extra cost accessory knob that will control the secondary receiver directly. Your operating style will determine whether you need that second knob. For casual operation, you won't need it. But if you're doing single operator 2 radio contesting, then you will definitely want the second knob. The big thing you notice when you turn on the radio is the very nice band scope. It gives you both amplitude along the frequency display and also a waterfall, all in real time and in color. You can split the band scope so that you've got a separate band scope for each receiver, meaning dual spectrum scopes. There are several widths available, but unlike the 7300, I don't see a way to make the scope width equal to the full band. It is possible to do most of the band. You can also bring up audio scopes that show both the spectrum and an oscilloscope-style display, just like you can with the 7300. And you can adjust the sensitivity and dynamic range of the scope and waterfall, a feature I wish I had on my Yaesu. Now let's talk about the features on the 7610 that I would call the usual features for a radio in this range. The radio covers 160 through 6 meters, provides 100 watts PEP output, has a built-in antenna tuner that will handle up to 3:1 SWR, and has a built-in sound card to allow for direct USB connection between the 7610 and your computer. It has a built-in CW keyer with lots of memory and contest features, such as the ability to hold the contest exchange in memory and can increment the serial number as you go. The radio has 2 preamps for use on upper bands, an attenuator, receive incremental tuning, transmit incremental tuning, and AGC with various time constants, and what they call twin passband tuning. This allows you to shift both the upper frequency and lower frequency audio response, which helps trim out interference from overlapping signals from below and above in frequency. I found it worked particularly well. It also has a noise blanker, adjustable digital noise reduction, both an automatic and manual notch filter, adjustable speech compression, the ability to work split, and an ample number of things you can measure, including an S meter, power out, SWR meter, ALC, compression, and some internal readings. It is even possible to see all of these meters at the same time. You can have a quasi-analog meter display or digital line displays. The radio also has lots of memories of various sorts, band stacking registers that are 3 deep, and a built-in clock, which can be both UTC and local, although I haven't yet figured out how to set it up correctly. It has an adjustable dial break so that you can set your preference for the main tuning dial. I like the main tuning dial to have a little bit of resistance to turning, so if I bump it accidentally, it won't go off into Never Never Land. If you turn the brake off entirely, the dial seems loose and lightweight. I adjusted it to my liking. Now let's talk about some features of the radio that are either unusual or less usual. It has a 7-inch full-color display and control panel, and it's important to note that this is a touch screen, so you can get directly into many functions without having to climb down menus. After you get used to this, it will allow you to get to the setup screen for just about anything very quickly. It takes a while to get used to, but the manual can really help. There's an interesting screen capture function that allows you to save the screen either in bitmap or JPEG format onto either an SD card or to your USB flash drive, captured at the full resolution of the monitor. Speaking of monitors, you can connect an external monitor, but it requires a DVI-D port and not an HDMI port. I find it kind of weird that it was not an HDMI port, since the DVI-D port is not common anymore. As it turns out, I have an old display unit that has the DVI-D input. All I have to do is find the cable. Like my Yaesu FTDX 3000, the 7610 has built-in RTTY and PSK31 receive capability. You can read it right on the screen. But going a significant step further, you can attach a USB keyboard to the 7610 and send both RTTY and PSK31 all without using your PC. Pretty cool. However, the 7610 does not have the built-in capability for FT8. For that, you will have to use your PC. The radio has a removable SD or SDHC card that you can use to store various configurations, or you can use a USB memory stick. ICOM says this is particularly valuable in a contest station where different people will be using the same radio at different times. Each person can store their favorite radio configuration on an SD card, and within moments of sitting down and starting to operate the radio, will be configured to their favorite settings. Note that screen captures can be recorded on these devices too. There's a very nice voice recorder and voice memory functions for contest use. There's also a recorder built in, so you can record the on-the-air audio for as long as you want until the card or USB stick fills up, which, depending on the size of the card, could be hours. There is an RJ45 jack on the back of the radio for an internet connection. This will update the clock over the internet using the Network Time Protocol, or NTP. ICOM literature says that the radio contains a server for remote operations. At the remote end, you will need to use the RSBA1 extra cost software. It's also interesting to note that the 7610 is set up to work with a transverter for the new 2200 meter low frequency band. There are two USB Type-B jacks on the back of the radio. The one on the right connects to your PC for control and sound card work. The one on the left is for a special purpose. It provides a high bandwidth IQ output that can be used by PC software to create a separate software-defined radio in your PC. There are several pieces of free software on the web that will allow you to use this IQ input. I'll have to make that the subject of a separate video. Now, DX Engineering claims the radio has Bluetooth, but I can find no mention of it either in the basic or advanced manual, and I can't find it in the menu, so I think that claim might be a mistake. Let's talk about some of the features that are of special interest to the contesters. The reciprocal mixing dynamic range, or RMDR, is a digital replacement for the superheterodyne measure called IP3. ICOM says that the IP3 measure does not apply to a fully digital radio, so it uses RMDR. They claim an RMDR of 110 dB at 2 kHz separation. This rivals the performance of other top-of-the-line radios, though it is not quite as high as ICOM's flagship super heterodyne 7850. I mentioned before the two completely independent dual receivers. These are specially shielded to reduce crosstalk between the receivers, so a loud signal in one receiver does not cause degradation of the second receiver. The radio has preselectors called digicell to help reduce the probability of analog to digital overflow in the presence of very strong signals. There are two antenna connectors, and you can route each to a receiver. For example, you can have different antennas for different bands, or diversity antennas on the same band, such as one vertically polarized and one horizontally polarized, as I mentioned before. With regard to the second receiver, there is an optional RC-28 USB encoder, basically a tuning knob, that can be plugged in to give a separate tuning knob for the second receiver, as I mentioned previously. There are, interestingly, separate speaker outputs for the main and sub-receivers. Also, and this is interesting, there's an input for a lab-grade 10 MHz reference signal. I might point out the only way you'll do better than the internal oscillator is to use a high-end GPS-disciplined reference oscillator. If you have multiple radios in a contest station, you can feed all of them from the same reference oscillator, and this will put your radios all on identically the same frequency. A tiny handful of people will use this. The other 99% won't have to. By the way, these reference oscillators start at around $5,000 each and go up rapidly from there. I just want to mention something about the radio's manual. The manual has been divided into a basic manual and an advanced manual. Personally, I think they should have been bound together. Both are on the supplied CD. Personally, I think they wrote a comprehensive manual and just divided it in half. For example, the instructions for how to clean the radio and how to replace fuses are in the advanced manual. Speaking of fuses, not only do you have the fuses in the power cord, but inside the radio there is a 5-amp circuitry fuse. Hope that you never have to replace that one because it requires disassembling the radio. Brad also sent along a copy of a book called The Radio Today Guide to the ICOM IC-7610 by Andrew Barron, call sign ZL3DW, which is focused on step-by-step how-tos. Also, Ray Novak of ICOM Marketing sent me 3 so-called technical reports that go into great detail about the various functions of the 7610. I'm pretty excited by this radio. I'll be making a few more videos about it and will share with you my operational experience. Brad says I can have it for a couple more months. I've never had a radio this fancy, so I've got a lot to learn about it. Let me talk for a moment about YouTube things. Subscribing first. YouTube uses as one of its primary measures the number of subscribers. I'm just short of 60,000. I encourage you to subscribe. When you subscribe, you are giving YouTube your vote of confidence in my channel and are telling them that they ought to share this channel with other people. And of course, when you subscribe, you become an Augie. Also, please check like and please share this video with your friends. Also, if you wish to provide some financial support to this channel, please go to dcasler.com/support. There you will find several support methods listed. A lot of people just like to give a one-time tip, and there's a tip jar on that page. Or if you wish to provide more continuing support, there's a link to my Patreon page. I also have all the videos for the technician class license that match the ARRL license manual, and they are available on a thumb drive, postpaid anywhere in the United States for $29.99. Also, the Amateur Extra videos are available on thumb drive for $49.99, similarly postpaid in the United States anywhere. Please note that the Amateur Extra questions will be changing on July 1st, 2020, so you have a little over 6 months left from today until you need to study the new question set. Some people find that having these videos on thumb drives is really helpful because they can watch them from anywhere on their PC or Mac. Of course, all the videos are available for free on YouTube for the watching. And the new feature that's coming up very soon on this channel are YouTube channel subscriptions or memberships. I'll put out a special video once I get those set up. Thank you all for watching, and until we next meet, 73.